Okay, I said earlier one of the reasons you should be excited to be here is because of all the amazing people and the amazing conversations. Well, we're about to have one of those amazing conversations right here on stage. We're about to have a fireside chat. So I would really love it if you would welcome our guests. I think this is correct. Rafe, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, Rafe is Rosner-Uddin, and James Wells, and of course, our host, Modar Alaoui. So thank you very much, and enjoy that. Oh, we don't have chairs. I got ahead of myself again. Do you guys all ready? Why don't you guys come on up? There we go. Gotcha. All right.
Are we doing musical chairs? Oh no, there's the third. Does that work? Hello. Let me come back a little bit. Great. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. I think it's been a really interesting morning. I'll sort of introduce myself and then introduce our panelists as well. So I am Rafe Rosner-Uddin. I'm one of the San Francisco correspondents for the Financial Times. I cover a smattering of companies from data center providers through to autonomous vehicle companies, and also look at the sort of commercial applications of robotics. And so I'm happy to sort of introduce our two panelists. So we've got Modar Alaoui, the founder of this summit. Modar is a free-time founder. He's made the leap from working on technology for the automotive sector. And as of this morning, you'll have heard he's also getting involved in venture cap with ALM Ventures. That's included establishing a $100 million pre-seed and seed fund focusing on robotics. Now, some of those investments are on the agenda, from Microfactor to Weave, and others are on stage. So I'm happy to also welcome James Wells, Chief Executive of Sanctuary AI. So James has been sort of working, and his team have been working on developing the robotic systems and software used to create general-purpose robots. Sanctuary was founded in 2018. It's based in Vancouver. And James previously worked as a sort of clean tech investor and sat on the board of several related companies. I'll turn over to James first because I think he has a couple of slides, and then we'll dive into some questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Great to be here. I was here a year ago in a larger, more engaged crowd, so this is quite exciting. So Sanctuary got going in 2018. We were one of the early folks, which gave us an early advantage in filing for a lot of the intellectual property in the space. We started off as a pure play humanoid, but what we learned in the last year is that the AI infrastructure and teleop stack that we've developed is actually applicable towards industrial robots. So we're very focused now on delivering performant AI. So what that means is policies that perform at 99% to meet the commercial threshold for a lot of the industrial customers. We do see that grippers do have limits, so we spent an awful lot of time developing a universal gripper, or what we like to call our hydraulic hand. I think we're the only group in the world developing a hydraulically based hand. I can talk more a little bit about that. And we're going after the manufacturing and logistics space with one of the best teams out there. Oh, and I've got a video, but I need a clicker, which I forgot to get. Maybe the IT guys can help us. No.
Sounds just about right.
I can do an interpretive dance of the video, but the video is way better. Or I guess you'll have to wait.
He's bringing a clicker.
Yeah. All right. Here's our friend from Haptics, who's going to get a shout out for doing this. Yeah. Awesome. So unfortunately, I can't share some customer videos, but I did want to show you just a couple of snapshots of what we're doing in the lab. So this is a very typical material handling task where, you get a bunch of parts. If anyone's worked in computer vision, you know how difficult transparent valves are. So you got to grab these things, do an in-hand manipulation, and then a precision placement. And this is commensurate of a lot of the tasks we see in the industrial sector. And on the other end of the spectrum, we're developing our hydraulic hand that I mentioned. So boy, dexterity is really challenging. Like hardware is just the tip of the iceberg. Once you've got reliable, high cycle life hands, which we're working towards, you got to figure out a way to control that. And there's lots of great minds working on that as well. But one of the things we're focused on is high quality data, which means low latency data that has force feedback and is haptically enabled. And we think that's going to be a really critical point for advancing dexterity. Yeah, and then I got an IP slide that just shows our leadership in the area, and then we can get on to
Right, well, thanks, James.
That one was quick.
Cool. Well, I think what I'll sort of start off with, particularly I think with Modar's announcement this morning, is really wanted to understand, I think, the funding environment and landscape for robotics at the moment. And James, I'm going to sort of throw it to you first, because it'd be great to understand, what the experience has been for Sanctuary in terms of positioning yourself in the market. I think there are a number of players now. How are you making yourself unique to investors?
Yeah, we've had quite a journey, actually. But as I mentioned, like we started off almost as like a category leader, and then boy, we saw just a wave of innovation come out of China. I think at one point, there's over 100 plus humanoid groups out there. And, we as a company haven't benefited, as some of our peers are, with raising some of these mega rounds. And so what it's forced us to do is really focus on what the customer cares about. So our focus now is actually building performant policies in a way that's very efficient. So what we're finding, not to get too into the weeds, is that the fine-tuning process or the task-specific data is the most contributory towards a performant policy. And so we're spending an awful lot of time at customer sites building highly performant policies that we think customers are going to adopt. And it's a bit orthogonal to the generalization approach. I mean, if you think about generalization or performance, those two vectors are essentially at war. And, we're trying to be very pragmatic and accelerate customer adoption by focusing on performance first.
Great. And Modar, I mean, when you're thinking about sort of companies that you want to add to your portfolio, particularly sort of at the early stages now, I mean, what are you looking for?
Foundational technologies that can help build the actual ecosystem from data to hardware to software to everything in between. We invest in the category, the ecosystem, not just hardware or software. And we look for moats. It's different from one company to another. For Sanctuary, I think one of their moats is IP. One of the reasons we recently joined as an investor. They also have a tremendous track record in dexterity, or rather haptic feedback. And that really is different from one company to another. But we look for first mover advantage, execution, foundational technologies.
Great. And I think James mentioned this sort of race that's underway. I think we've seen it with large language models. I mean, we talk about the Cold War a lot in the context of AI models. I mean, between the US and China, I mean, where do you feel like the US currently has an edge when you're looking at companies that you want to sort of invest in? Where do you feel like there might be weaknesses or lagging players?
I think the landscape today is China leads in hardware. 80-90% of rare earth minerals come from China. There's a tremendous execution in manufacturing, automation, etc. I think the US leads in the brain so far still. There's a lot of competition. China is catching up. But I do believe it's, depending on the use cases, it's kind of neck to neck. One of our portfolio companies is in China. We're region agnostic. I think I mentioned that earlier. Another one is in France, Paris. And wherever we see opportunity, we're just going to go. The industry is still small. We're still building the ecosystem. There isn't hundreds of thousands of companies racing towards this. And so wherever we see there's opportunity to collaborate, connect founders, and the industry, we will invest. But I have to say, hardware will become commoditized more and more, especially in China. And software has been for a while and will continue to be the moat, at least for the US. But that's my take.
Great. And I mean, I wonder, you've spoken about building an ecosystem. Starting off with this summit, you started your fund, and it's about sort of building up to this sort of more collective offering, more comprehensive offering. Talk a bit more about that ecosystem and what you want to see directionally, particularly on the back of some of the work that you're doing.
Well, I think robotics has been transformational historically, but AI has been just as transformational, and so this kind of marriage of AI and robotics is just incredible. I truly believe it will change every single industry as we know it, whether it's consumer-facing or not. For the next decade, I'm fairly convinced we double down on the ecosystem, the humanoid form factor particularly, spatial intelligence or spatial AI, a new form of intelligence beyond foundation models or the evolution of foundation models. I think we have a panel about that later today. And the ecosystem in general. We're bullish on data, teleop. We're not going to get there without teleop. Autonomy will not get there without teleop. Adamo is one of our portfolio companies. I think they're here in the audience. Amazing company. They're trying to build whatever scale AI did for the autonomous vehicle industry with teleop, data, et cetera. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity. I mean, for a lot of people, fund one is $100 million. Hardware is capital intensive. We do plan to invest somewhere between 35 and 40 startups over the life of the fund, and that's just at seed and pre-seed. Quite honestly, if we had multiple funds at $1 billion each, we would still invest, and there will still be a ton of opportunity.
And well, James, I think one of your sort of perspectives here is that we've heard a lot from generalist model makers this morning, but you feel that actually, the value prop for Sanctuary is your focus on very specific tasks with a high sort of degree of certainty. And I just wonder, as those generalist models evolve and they become more accurate and they reach that degree of accuracy, what does that mean for companies like Sanctuary? How do you sort of build a protective moat around yourselves?
Yeah, well, there's a question around timing there, right? So what we've built is almost like an AI model generator. So we generate very high-performant, task-specific models. And what we're finding is you can do this with data volumes below 20 to 30 hours. And, I spent so much time with the industrial operators and the customers out there, and they don't really care about the breadth of the models. They care about you actually doing that specific task, and I'm talking about specifically manufacturers. So the focus is, can we build reliable, robust models that allow these manufacturers to meet their ROI? And we're just starting to see evidence. We've done a number of trials this year at customer sites where we're getting close to that threshold.
And Modar, when you sort of think about James's perspective here, and you think about going into 2026, you've got a number of generalist players in the market. You're investing in a number of other providers, whether they're providing the teleops data, similar, as you sort of mentioned, similar to sort of what Scale AI were doing with sort of tagging. Where are you seeing the greatest strides? Do you feel like the generalists can catch up, that they can be much more competitive against someone who's more specific and focused on dedicated tasks? What does the ecosystem look like going into 2026?
It's two different schools of thoughts. Some people, go after a generalist model, and some want to tackle certain problems and real-world examples and real-world problems for customers that are willing to pay today. I like the longer-term view of generalist kind of intelligence and, of course, the form factor together with the data. I'm bullish on that. There's 4 or 5 companies doing exactly the same, probably going after different verticals, whether it's a warehousing only versus manufacturing versus the home, et cetera. The holy grail is general robotics, general capability. It doesn't mean you can't start with specific tasks, but I would. I'm kind of biased towards both schools of thoughts, and which is the reason why we like to invest across the board.
Great. And then the final one from me, I think, obviously a large part of our coverage has been focusing on, investor jitters around large language models. How much is being spent on data center infrastructure, on the actual fundamentally on all these startups. How does that apply or spill over into robotics, where I think, we're talking about capital-intensive processes to get, fundamentally get the hardware and software working properly. I mean, should we have similar sort of investor jitters in this market, or do you feel like there's enough there to sort of prevent some of those fears that we're seeing right now?
Maybe you could summarize the question one more time for me. So is the idea that we're trying to build data sets similar to LLMs? And I'm not sure I fully grokked the question.
Well, I think it's much more the sort of capital intensity of delivering on the sort of aspirations of Sanctuary and other robotics companies.
Yeah, it's capital intensive for sure. I mean, a lot of this stuff, the software is just one component of it, right? You got to do the full stack. There's a ton of system integration, and I thought the folks from McKinsey did a great job just articulating that doesn't even get you a product, right? You got to figure out the safety systems, the reliability, the service program, how you integrate, how you interface with all the warehouse software. So it, a lot of this is just focused on the technology, but that just gets you into the game.
I'd say data, obviously, if you talk about software or hardware is going to become commoditized, sensors are going to become cheaper, sensor fusion is going to become perfected. The use cases depend on the data. We're talking about supervised learning, not so much semi-supervised or weakly supervised or self-supervised. So we're still talking, Gen AI is still supervised learning. It does require data, a ton of it. It has to be accurate. It has to represent the environment in which the actual humanoid needs to be deployed in. So data is a big play. Execution obviously is everything. Access to rare data, Imancra, one of our portfolios, they have hospital pharmacies data, which is like very, very niche. Not easy for anyone to get. I think they have a presentation tomorrow. That's a foundational mode for most companies, unless they are building hardware only, which isn't probably sustainable in my point of view.
Gotcha. So the bit that you're sort of most concerned about, or well, not concerned about, but seemingly are sort of avoiding is very much on the hardware itself. You feel that's become commoditized, and therefore, yeah.
So correct, and I have to just button this up. In my opinion, everybody's playing with the same toolboxes. And the analogy I give is you go to Home Depot, you pick up a box, you can pick up a screwdriver and a hammer, and you can pick up all the tools that everybody else can pick up. Some people build high rises, and some people build a shed or an ADU, right? Execution, speed, creativity, discipline, and capital matter a lot. And so this isn't, generalists, for example, earlier, they explain how their data is really useful and helpful to their own use case. In my conversation with Peace, he's like, well, we have unique data. I'm like, how do you compare? Like, well, we have unique data. And that's been like the answer. Of course, execution and capital and everything else matters, but I do believe data is the new gold.
Great. Well, thank you both. I think we've probably got some time for questions.
Can I just add one?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I think we got to be a little careful about stating that hardware is commoditized. I think certain aspects are. But, one of the whole reasons you want a humanoid is for the end effector, right? The hands, the manipulation part. And that is far from commoditized. That is the, that is the bottleneck to, enriching the futures of all the investors that are hoping that humanoids can deliver on the promised land. It comes down to how you manipulate things. And that hardware problem is largely unsolved.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a lot of it has to do with dexterity, right? It's the last frontier. We do have a panel later today. Jeremy is on it.
Yeah, Jeremy from Sanctuary. There he is.
Dexterity is, there was a Wall Street Journal article that just came out 3 weeks ago or so that says the hand problem, which is exactly the title of the fireside chat. Dexterity is a problem. It leverages hardware and software, but also data. So it is the last frontier, and it's going to be a problem for a while. But there will be different types of dexterity tasks. There will be tasks that can perform at their best only using soft robotics or a hybrid. But I do agree with James, and I understand his point of view. They started investing in this early on. One of their modes also is haptic feedback. I don't know if you have any information about the touch, the domino.
No, Jeremy's going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
But I do believe, I agree. So dexterity is the last frontier. Maybe a year and a half ago, locomotion was. It's solved. The folks from Xpeng are here in a conference today or tomorrow. They perfected the catwalk. So locomotion is a solved problem.
We're going to see.
When you see that video or you see the actual iron, which couldn't make it through customs, we were hoping to have Iron here on stage. But when you see that demo, whether it's video or real life, you will realize how locomotion has been solved, period.
Awesome. So, data, dexterity, those are the sort of two takeaways. Those are the things that
the two Ds.
The two things that we sort of expect are still distant or near. How soon can these problems be fixed? Well, I mean, data's not really a problem to be fixed, bar getting more of it.
It's a function of the task you're trying to solve. So, our commercial timeline is sort of end of 27 for our hands. But solving data with grippers, is a lot closer than that. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Well, I think we have time for some questions. I don't know if there's anyone in the audience who might like to ask either James or Modar some questions.
Oh, yeah. I have a question because you guys mentioned both data and dexterity, but what are your viewpoints on power? Like, it's a big problem also in the EV market, like just the actual power to sustain these robots within a valuable work a day, for example, is a bit hard because now you're adding more kilograms and loads and all that stuff to it and reducing the amount that it can actually pick up from a perspective. So what's your perspective on that in the future, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think for mobile robots, it's certainly a challenge. Getting the power density increased for batteries is obviously going to extend the lifetime of the robots. That's still an issue. Like a lot of things we're looking for are tethered or stationary. And so I don't think it's going to shift the base load of the power. But I think for once you want mobile robots, certainly leaving an interior of a building or going outside, we're going to have to see some gains in innovation for the battery, just if you want to see that like 8-hour workday. And the reason I say an 8-hour workday is because that is how these adopters are thinking about paybacks for replacing labor units.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, how's it going? This is Toshi from Sensible Robotics. I'm curious what kind of novel data approaches you guys are seeing for collecting dexterity data, or is it really just a matter of scaling up the number of arm farms and, it's just a scaling law?
No, it's not a function of that. So there's this great article by Rodney Brooks about a month ago that said you can't just use vision. So if you think about it, you need interactivity in the data to build an interactive model with an object. And so the thing that's lacking is force feedback. So you really need a way to transmit the force from the robot to the teleoperator. And, at Sanctuary, where we're uniquely building a hydraulically based hand, we can actually measure the pressure in the fluid line that translates to the force that corresponds with the vision data. So we're currently generating highly unique, haptically enabled data with force feedback, with vision, as a baseline to start training these more foundational models for hands. But I don't see how you do that with electromechanical or cable-based hands. So it's unclear whether we're kind of unique in the world to do that, but I think everyone's really thinking hard, how do we get force feedback data for dexterous policies?
Question for Modar. Thanks for mentioning that one of your portfolio companies is working on basically data collection similar to scale AI. Could you comment on what do you think the future landscape of that is? Because right now it's if I understand correctly, it's still very labor intensive, very operation heavy. Do you foresee that being a technical advantage from any of these companies, or how do your portfolio company like compete and win in this scenario?
I think it's an advantage. There will be more and more teleop. The more humanoids we're going to put out there, the more teleop is going to be needed, the more data is going to be needed. Whether the force or the labor is here in the US or elsewhere, that's questionable. Think of it as the intermediary step between no automation and autonomous systems, and think of autonomous humanoids not materializing, at least in human-facing environments, for the next 5 years minimum. And think about the opportunities between now and 5 years, and how many quote-unquote scale AI-like companies could be built and cater to all the few hundred thousands or millions of humanoids that Elon or Jensen or others are talking about. It is a massive category.
Could you say the name of your portfolio company again?
It's Adamo. You're going to see them this afternoon.
Hi, Chris Kahari. The U.S. is making some incredible next-generation technologies. Why is robotics so supply constrained for manufacturing in the U.S.? Why are we so behind?
China, I guess, who you're comparing against. Again, the McKinsey slide was great that only 6% of factories in U.S. are fully scaled up. Yeah. I went to China Q1 this year and toured maybe 3 or 4 different companies. It's just incredible the rate and pace that they're investing in the space. You got to remember that they're the manufacturing country the last decade, and so they have a huge advantage. The work ethic there, they do this 9-9-6, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for 6 days a week, and just they got policies to support all of this industrial advancement, and the world has kind of outsourced manufacturing to China for a long time. So I think that's kind of the history there. We're from Canada, so slightly different, but we still have a huge issue in Canada because Canada's labor productivity growth rate is the worst out of all OECD countries. And so Canada, we got to pull up our boots and really start driving labor productivity. I don't know if you had any other comments.
No, I mean, yeah. That's a pretty good summary. Not a lot of automation here, not a lot of manufacturing to begin with, and so just, China takes the crown, I guess.
I'll just add one more thing, there is a huge appetite for many of domestic manufacturers to start onshoring activities that were previously outsourced. We're seeing that as thematic across a lot of industrial manufacturers. I think we're at time.
Great, I think we're at time. I think James has emphasized his Canadianness, which is always super interesting, bypassing lots of tariffs. And
I don't know, I'm kind of running into them, but yeah.
I think before we got on stage, you spoke about sort of backdoors into the US. But I think it's a super interesting space, and I think the competition is only really sort of intensifying, particularly between sort of Western players and China. And I think the next year is going to be at least for us, a really interesting one in terms of coverage. So thank you both. If we could give them a round of applause, and I think everyone can head to lunch.
Thanks, Rafe.